Yo, the kids official sliding on the instrumental. Nordic combos, twist your mental like forbidden.
Peace to the public and power to the people. What up, world? Where we are at with it today is the space where the vulnerable are powerful and where the most gangster thing you could do is serve. This is the All the Way Live podcast.
Every single week, my brother Miles Xavier and I dedicate ourselves to giving y'all that carefully curated content. And we do it consistently. And we do it for one reason and one reason only, man. We do it because we know that people are going through it in life, man. We know that people are suffering from mental illness. People are going through depression. People are feeling lonely. People are feeling isolated, man. And so we come here and we curate a space of positivity for y'all. We dedicate ourselves to research, getting super fly content. We break it down. And this week is super special, man. And you know, I hope nobody mistakes my positive introduction to the show away from the fact that one of my extended cousins took his life this week, man. So, you know, one of the big reasons why Miles and I got back on the show to do it is because I had lost another cousin to who succumbed to depression. And so, you know, the promise that I made at that particular point was to say that this particular show is going to be for those people that are going through it and they need a little bit of a pick-me-up to get them through their day, man. So rest in peace to Jacob Zabel, rest in peace to Tejo, rest in peace to Tabang. You guys are not forgotten. And we do this show for y'all, and we do this show for the people that stay tuning in, man.
Yo, big facts. That's beautiful, bro. That's beautiful, man. And yeah, just being intentional about being here with you today to share and to, you know, to do this thing, because it definitely lifts me up, it definitely heals me. So may today be a healing conversation for you too, and may your family have peace and be able to move forward. Hold your heads, man. It's crazy out here. It's crazy. Way too many RIPs that we're gonna get into this week. But before all of that, before any of that, we gotta acknowledge that Exodus in building in a big way. Not only by way of Johannesburg, where my brother's way over there, but also my man Hassan on the boards. Appreciate you. Can't do this thing without you.
Can do it.
And on this side, you already know what's going on. Chicago is in the building. This podcast is recorded on stolen land. It's actually dope to see that being acknowledged more throughout the city. If you head downtown, right on the river, they've got a big mural land, and that's big facts, right? This land was cared for by the Potawatomi people. That's the First Nations people. And the violence done to remove them from this land is inseparable from the violence that we see in this city today, this country today, this world today. I see a lot of First Nations culture being adopted and co-opted, style, fashion, even food, right? Trendy diets based on First Nations, the way that folks eat. So if we're gonna continue to live off this land that they cared for, and if we're going to continue to take from their culture and build on it, and we need to acknowledge where it comes from, and acknowledge our history in order to move forward. That's why we do that. And that's how we end the intro, with lifting up love for Indigenous people the world over, lifting up love for Black and brown people the world over, and lifting up love for y'all wherever y'all at in the world. Intro over. Let's get into the show.
Yeah, I get that, but is we live though? Is we like all the way live though? You heard?
Just to remind y'all that this is indeed a live show, and on this live show, we encourage absolutely everybody to continue to comment into the comment section if you're there. Engage in the conversation. We keep y'all engaged. My brother Miles Xavier and I are activists and community organizers within our own rights and within our own communities. And one of the things that we have pleasure to do with this show is being able to highlight the people that do impact work. We say that the Livehouse Nation and the Livehouse family is where impact meets art. You saw Malik Roberts, who my brother introduced us to last week. You've seen the different impact spotlights that we've been doing, man. And this week ain't no different. We got a specific impact spotlight highlighting Smiley News. So
yeah. Shout out to Smiley News, man. You know, for all your impact-based information needs, go check them out. Follow them on Instagram. We appreciate them for supporting a little initiative we got going on. Tell them,
We
bro.
did indeed. We did indeed, man. Smiley News came through in a big way, and I'm sure we'll get a picture of the article that they did this week. It's a Devon-based online publication, and they specifically focus on highlighting just positive news, man. The news is overrun with negative news, and so they do just positive news. And it was very cool. Was able to reach out to them, and they were like, hey, we love the work that you guys are doing at the Mandulo Foundation, and we'd love to highlight it. And they gave us this opportunity, this little spread. Look at my boy Chilla over there on the boards. Shout out to our producer for pulling all of this stuff up. Yeah, man, it's cool. It's cool to get the word out. We're trying to get laptops to kids.
Yeah, and laptops are a transformative tool, bro. Like I remember getting one specifically to go off to school, and I feel like it's been enough time since then now, as I'm getting old, that you start to take it for granted. But now that my laptop is on the fritz, now that this mug might be like clocking out on me, you need this in this day and age, like to compete, whether it's making a resume, whether it's answering emails, whether it's Zoom calls. Like a laptop is a tool that you need to be able to participate in a professional world in any type of way, even in the academic world. So to be able to give that tool to kids means a lot to me. I know means a lot to all the folks at Mandulo. So it's dope to be able to amplify the message. And if you got a laptop that works and that you're in a position to donate or can hook us up with anybody that might be able to support this laptop drive initiative, we'll take phones. You got iPods, I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? It never hurts to ask. So we're just trying to amplify this and make sure that everybody has access to the tools they need for success.
Indeed. And once COVID happened, what ended up happening is that a lot of it became an online based learning. And so you think about the communities in Katleong, in Soweto, in Southside Chicago, a lot of these kids, they do not have access to internet at home, or do not have access to internet in a way that can allow them to access education, right? And so they're kind of put in a place where they have to rely on either mom's laptop, and if mom doesn't have a laptop or mom doesn't have a computer, don't have internet, they're in a bit of a predicament. So what we've been seeing in these communities is that a lot of kids are getting left behind, bro. Like a lot of kids are now a year or two back in school. It means a lot now, but what does that mean for the job market 10, 15 years from now, when those are the people that are supposed to be entering the job market? So we're very fortunate to be in a position where we can see and are exposed to what our communities are going through. We're even more fortunate to the fact that there have been donors already. We've already handed out laptops. We've handed out scholarships. We're about to hand out even more of those things coming into the year, man. And there's no better feeling than doing this type of work. So we encourage absolutely everybody to join the family of servitude, be part of the Livehouse Nation, and help us help some kids.
There it is. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yo, we have a heavy show today. We have a heavy show, a full list show of things to be able to talk about. We're going to be unpacking the baby shortage formula. It's a kids-based show, but unfortunately for the wrong reasons. And I'm trying to stay positive about it because what we're going to talk about is so dark, bro.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you bringing the uplifting energy to it. It's tough, man. This is definitely it feels like a time where laugh to keep from crying is more true than ever. But we're gonna get through it, man. That's what we do on this show, is we try and make sense of the world. We react to this stuff in real time. And wherever the conversation takes us, we family. So we eyed up in here.
And what we do is give y'all information that sounds smart around your friends with. Don't forget that. Let's get into it.
Yo, man, there's a saying. Actually, I would be interested to know if you're familiar with it, because it's rooted, I think, in an African proverb. Not that every dude from Africa knows every African proverb, but let me know if you've ever heard this. there's a way of asking how things are, how you are, how's things, by asking how are the children, right? And it's like it's deeper than like how are your kids. It's like it's a way of asking how is the society doing, you know. And I just always thought that was fire. And so I find myself in a position where if someone were to ask me that question, how are the children, right? How is your society, America, Chicago, my community, South Shore, and on a lot of those levels, kids ain't all right, bro. The kids ain't all right. It's a lot. It's a hard knock life. It would be a hard time to be a shorty right now, especially a super shorty. Right? There's a baby formula shortage that's making it difficult for mothers to provide even the most basic needs to their children, and that's crazy. That's nuts. As a non-parent, as a pre-parent, I'm scared.
Pre-parent? I've never heard the term pre-parent before. And technically,
was-
anyone that doesn't have kids is a pre-parent.
No, not necessarily. I'm somebody who wants kids, so there's that distinction. But I was labeled a pre-parent. If you're in the Chicagoland area, we are convening parents, Parent University at the former Price Elementary School, 43rd and Drexel. Pull up on us. We feeding. We got Chick-fil-A in the mornings for everybody. It's breakfast, and we getting parents together, building resources. Since I don't have kids, but I'm helping to convene that space, they labeled me a pre-parent. So I've been running with that. And as somebody who, yeah, I think I do want kids one day. I look at a situation like this and go, first of all, I don't know nothing. I don't know enough to have kids. That's number one, because I don't know how to respond to this baby formula shortage. I don't know what I would do. I would just be mixing up milk. I don't know. I don't know how to react to this. But also that, like, yeah, man, this supply shortage. I was heated because I couldn't get a PS5, but clearly it's affecting things much deeper than that, even, you know.
So big kids and small kids are being impacted by shortages, and this particular shortage is been brought on by a few different factors. Right now, the main important storyline of the shortage, of the baby formula shortage, is that there has been a detection of some of some, let's call it, viruses and bacteria that were found in the companies that make, in one of the companies that make baby formula. And what ends up happening then is that we now get exposed to the back end of how the baby formula industry works. And surprise, surprise, as you might find it, there's only 4 companies that control the whole baby formula market in the US. Specifically, in this case, you had Abbott Nutrition, which produces the likes of Similac, like we have over here on the page, who controls 45% of the entire formula market. And so a bacteria outbreak of sepsis, chronobacter. I didn't even know what chronobacter was, but I don't want it around baby food, is what I know. That was found, and a recall has since happened. Compound that with supply logistics that are brought on by COVID, and you have a baby shortage, apparently.
Yeah, man. So I want to highlight a couple things that you said in there, right? Like you said, the number one company controls 42%. Did you say
45.
that? 45% of the market. So that illustrates to me, I guess, why we can hear about one company having a recall but see empty shelves across the board. It's feeling very cartelish. Is everything a cartel? Like behind everything, oil, gas, cartel. Baby formula, it's looking real cartelish. Are we gonna uncover a cartel at the root of at the root of everything?
We just did, and this is another one. This is indeed another cartel, right? They control 45% of the total market. So this there's actually a history of when it was alerted that there was some quality control issues within specifically their Michigan plant, right? So this is where the chronobacter broke out from, is their Michigan plant. And so the recalls have been for foods that are coming out of that plant. But clearly this plant is working like Jimmy Buckets in game 6, 45, putting up 45%, you know? And so the recall that has since happened for products such as Similac, Alimentum, and Elcor, which all powdered formula are getting recalled because of some of the reports on babies getting sick.
Dang. So what that tells me is that nothing is safe, because you said the factory's in Michigan.
Yep.
We making this. If we can't even put stuff we making here on our shelves, we are in deep trouble, right? Because I know that there's supply shortages across a whole bunch of other industries. I found out what a semiconductor was. Did not know what that was pre-pandemic. Found out real quick that it's in everything, pretty much. And we're really struggling to, fill the need for those in the automotive industry and the tech industry, even air conditioners. So it's crazy to see this, these supply chain issues kind of, we're getting bodied on both sides, right? We getting hit on trying to import and export stuff, and we getting hit even on issues on stuff we make here in the country. What is the solution? How do we feed these babies?
So part of the issue is the fact that too much of it is being made over here. So 98% of all the formula that is made or consumed in the US is made in the US. And more concerningly, when you think about the lack of being able to get things to get imported in, what the scariest thing for me out of all of this is that Abbott has the contract exclusive contract to feed low income households with their baby formula. So if we're seeing the reports now of what has been happening, to some of these kids, you can only assume that there's been so many more that have been impacted, but because of their income, because they're from low income households, they probably haven't been reported. So this whole story even starts with a whistleblower in September of 2020 coming out and saying, "Hey, yo, the way that the conditions in these houses make no sense. The conditions in these plants are nasty, and there's bacteria around, and it's going into baby food." And they said this in September of 2020, and an official review was only done 6 months later. So the question then becomes, how efficient do we expect organizations like the FDA to be in being able to make sure that this doesn't happen?
Yeah, I think for the awareness to happen in September and we're only feeling the effects of it now speaks to just a knot of bureaucracy that's clearly like failing in several ways. But on the other hand, it is deep, right? If we want the institutions that are supposed to scrutinize and make sure things are safe to look at anything closely, is what we feeding babies, right? So we want that system to be on point. Clearly it's not. Dang, man, you said we make what, 98% of the baby formula we consume? We got to diversify that portfolio now. I'm all with, creating jobs domestically and all that, but you got to diversify a little bit. And that seems to be kind of what we're in the position that we've been forced. That's what we've been forced to do in this position. The response at this point has been to import baby formula from Germany. So they got the U.S. Air Force loading up with bricks of baby formula, and they coming.
They're over there at the border cutting them open. This is some like, get it in here.
Get it in here. Hey man, desperate times.
With knives.
Hey bro, it's getting crazy out there. It's lots of dudes, I'm sure, in Hawaiian t-shirts that's caking off of that bootleg formula. I got that for you. It's uncut, not stepped on.
If you see, and that poses a big issue. And shout out to our producer for pulling up some alternatives over here. One of the things that the FDA says is, "Ayo, we know that there's a shortage, but please be careful in your homemade remedies on what you're feeding your kids." Now, as my brother Miles said, we're pre-parents, meaning we don't have kids at all that he knows of. That I know for a fact that I don't have any kids, right? But I remember recently Summer Walker came under scrutiny because she was saying, just feed your kids veggies and that should be okay. And people were like, yo, don't do that. Do not just feed your kids veggies, right? So one of the things that the FDA has said is be careful in the alternatives that you seek to feed your kids. But one thing is a fact, is that this controlled market right now was allowed to operate for months on months with a long list of complaints happening that these kids are getting seriously ill. The FDA was unable to step in efficiently enough, and now we're at a place where, like you said, Germany is sending it through, Australia is sending it through. If I was in my position now, bro, I don't even know what I'd feed my kid.
Word. And again, shout out to Hassan for pulling this up, because this right here, this is for me. This is a PSA for people's brains who work like my brain that would go, we were once cavemen. And at that point, we ain't had no Similac. And all we had was raw veggies, and we and our kids made it, right? So in my brain, I'm going, we got the tools, we can figure this out. But nothing is more important. Nothing do you want to be more sure what you're doing than with the health of a child that's in your care. So I'm glad there is something for people who's got a simple brain like mine that would go straight to milk is milk. And if you crush it up, it's baby food.
No, that is not how that works.
Incorrect.
Please, by all means, out of all the things that we say on this show, specifically disregard that one that Miles just said. Do not just feed your kids dry milk.
No, that's what I was saying. I wasn't advising people to do that. I was saying that this list is specifically for people that think like me. Don't do that. I was just being vulnerable, man. I heard that they were powerful.
You're not wrong. But one thing for a fact is that baby food is super expensive. Baby food is outrageously expensive, man. If you ever wanna find a cheap contraceptive, is just walk through the baby aisle. Look at the baby formula prices. Just take a gander. See what that looks like right now. Baby food is the price of bricks of cocaine.
Bruh, regular food is the price of bricks of cocaine, no doubt. Like, it's high out here. It's high. And I guess that just speaks to this whole like conversation we having about this supply chain issue. It's affecting all sorts of industries, right? And part of the reason for that, the reason it's so it's been so devastating in this particular way in such a short time is because when COVID hit, a whole bunch of companies and businesses were left with excess inventory. They couldn't move it because people weren't shopping, people weren't going to stores, people were only buying necessities, saving, hoarding money, just like they were hoarding toilet paper. It's crazy. And so the companies had to be they had to liquidate that entire inventory. A lot of companies had to do that at a loss. Just because COVID continued to extend, our projection of how long it was going to last continued to extend. So companies had to liquidate their inventories. And as we come back and that demand returns, they haven't been able to ramp back up because of the way in which that original inventory was lost, the way in which they took losses during that time. Some industries, like we even talked about the oil and gas industry on this show, are kind of trying to squeeze folks, you know what I'm saying, to get that money back and recoup that revenue. So not saying that that's the case in the baby formula shortage, but just saying that across different industries, the ebb and flow, like that snap back of demand is really messing us up. And it makes it hard to get everything from baby food to, computers, car parts.
PS5.
Crazy. Yep.
PS5. So one of the reasons that was said to have been the issue and why the FDA has not been able to respond quickly enough has come from the fact that the D in FDA, which stands for Food and Drug Administration, has for the longest time focused just on the drug portion of the administration, investing copious amounts of money into the drug element. Miles, you've familiar with investing a lot of money in drugs. Well, how do you find the FDA's role and complicity in this?
First of all, this episode of the All the Way Live podcast is called Allegations. No, wait, it's called Allegedly, right? We'll just put that out there. And I think actually the Food and Drug Administration needs to go hard because the opioid epidemic is a real thing, right? So when I zoom all the way out and look at government's approach to the war on drugs, which they lost, right? I can point out a lot of ways in which investments were wasted on issues where just the approach was never going to be successful, right? I'm looking at you, Dare, right? But like,
just say no, bro.
Yeah, right. But when we look at in the last few years, when we look at what's happened with the opioid epidemic and the crisis, not saying that they've been investing in the most successful way either, but that I can appreciate that attention being applied and an approach that's more human, not criminalizing addicted opioid users, but treating it as a medical issue. I can appreciate that investment being made, even if I'm a little salty that when it was Black folks and it was the crack epidemic, It was our fault. It was on us. But I digest.
Speaking of the opioid crisis, I read a crazy statistic that said there are enough opioids in Florida alone to be able to give everybody in the US 3 full pill bottles of opioids in Florida alone. And this kind of goes into like the issue with the US. Like once you once something becomes overly commercialized, and there let's look at whenever these types of things happen in the US, whenever an outbreak of this sorts happen, whenever there's like some malpractice that doesn't logically make sense, why it wasn't able to be stopped back in time, all you got to look at is the scoreboard for who donates the most to campaigns, right? So you have the NRA, which is the National Rifles Association. We're going to get into that. That's a huge contributor to Congress for lobbying. And so pharmaceuticals, those two are the biggest funders when it comes to lobbying. So when you ask yourself, why is it that these issues are the ones that tend to be the hardest to ever overcome? The devil is in the chankura, like they say in South Africa.
Yeah. Give them that truth. Hard to take sometimes. It's hard to it's hard to look at that and not feel like that's wild daunting, because those are giants, right? The gun industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Like, none of us besides Elon Musk, and we know what he off doing, it can hope to have the kind of cash it takes to combat that, right? So how do we organize as people to stand up and say, no, we can't prioritize profit over people's lives, which is exactly what's happened in both of those situations. Yo, if you want to learn more about the opioid epidemic in a kind of laid back way, there's a dope show on Hulu. I think if you got Hulu, find your friend that has Hulu, give them your Netflix or your Spotify, and make sure that you exchange so that you can watch on Hulu the show called Dope Sick. It kind of chronicles the decisions made by pharmaceutical companies to obscure the addictiveness of opioids that were being prescribed on a mass scale, and how we got to where we at. Again, the prioritization of profit over people, and we gotta say no, not to drugs, but to drug companies.
Nah. Say no like
Nah.
that. Yo, listen, that's a perfect segue into our next section, man. Speaking about people that are putting profit over people. Another sad occurrence is happening in the US. And so let us get into our next segment of the show. This is the most difficult part of the show, man. This is the most difficult part of the show whenever we have to come in here and report on tragedies of this sort. It was not even last week. Even last week, we came here and we spoke about the mass shootings that had happened in Buffalo, New York. And less than a week later, here we are back again discussing the terrible school shooting that happened in Texas at the Robb Elementary School that saw the life of 22 people. 22 people were lost. 19 children were amongst the dead. The last time that this happened the last thing to bring me to tears was George Floyd and was the Sandy Hook shooting, where they killed just a bunch of kids, man. So this right here is additionally is sad again, and it's unfortunate, and it's angering, and it's all these different emotions. Miles, you are in the US right now. You are in the country. You're in Chicago, which is a place that's also going through its own gun control crisis. How does it feel when you see this happening in your country, bro?
It feels like this is the part that is the scariest, is how much can happen that we won't react to, right? And when I say we won't react, of course the thoughts and prayers is coming, right? Of course politicians everywhere are stepping up to their podiums and shaking their fists and shaking their head. And I'm not even saying that everybody who gets on a microphone and speaks out is being disingenuous. Shout out to Steve Kerr, coach of the Warriors, who got on to speak about that before their game with Dallas. And I felt him, right? But we don't react in a way that's preventative. And that is some of the scariest. What we will allow to happen is, I think, some of the scariest things about our country, because the list of events like this, which are horrible and tragic, but also each represented an opportunity for change, for us to grieve toward progress. And the list of times we haven't done anything, haven't done that, haven't been constructive, haven't learned our lesson, is what what feels unfair about this. I don't want to take up too much of the air in the room, but I'm just saying, I came on this show last week and just really just spoke like from the straight up heart. Just like, this is an opportunity to be human. This is an opportunity to not allow this to pass and for us to be numb to it. So to be sitting here again, repeating those same words, like, and I don't have anything else to give. And that's what's unfair about this, is if you pick one and you respond to it and if you really try and put your heart out there and try and learn from it, and you right back there the next week before there's even time to do anything, before we can even post the clip of us talking about having that discussion. That's what feels unfair about this, is that I don't think we're gonna do anything, and I don't know how to feel like, I don't know what's gonna take. I don't know what if I don't think this is it. What does that say about where we at?
So what we wanted to curate this conversation around, and be intentional about, is to be able to unpack mass shootings, because clearly this is something that is been happening at an alarming rate, at an increasing rate in the U.S. There's a lot of information around it. There's a lot of complexity around it. It is an issue that it's not one that has a single solution to it, but it's still important to be able to look at it from different angles and just analyze, okay, what are the facts about this, and that's where my research took me to, is just to truly understand, what even does mass shooting mean? So a mass shooting means if there's a shooting of 4 or more people in a single place, right? So since 2010, there have been 11,300 mass shootings. In the US, there are as many as 6 mass shootings a day, is what they're saying, right? So there are levels and tiers to how we consider what mass shootings are. This particular situation, I think why people continue to get riled up, is that you had a 18-year-old who had exhibited a lot of the preconditioned signs of someone that would be considered high risk, was able to purchase 2 assault rifles, 345 cartridges of ammunition within a span of a week, and nothing was done. This is someone that exhibited some characteristics within their school, from the counselor, who had already been notified that he is an issue, and shot his grandmother in the face, right? So there's that element of it, despite the science being inconclusive in a lot of things, because that is the case, right? There is no true correlation between, say, gun permissiveness and mass shootings. There is no true correlation between say, mental health in particular states and mass shootings. There's the correlation levels on the different things that would help you predict it are a bit low, and they're very specific in where they are. But one thing for sure, despite what the statistics say, is that an 18-year-old being able to buy 2 assault rifles is just something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think, and even as we spoke about it last week, right, I really wanted to highlight some of the limitations in the ways that we have these conversations. And I think part of the reason that it's so difficult to pull any conclusive insights from the data that exists is that a lot of the data that's collected in mass doesn't differentiate between any type of instance where 4 or more people are killed, right? So that means domestic violence incidents are lumped in with gang involved shootings, are lumped in with terrorist acts, are lumped in with these individual shooters, and a whole host of other potential instances, right? I don't even want to get fired up about the intentionality of us not specifically investigating this particular profile, because I do believe you can differentiate what's happening here from those other instances. I do think if there was if the police were so inclined, they could create a database specifically of shooters and add your criteria: assault rifles, right? Random killings with no single, or even like with no intended target, right? Attacking people in large public places rather than encountering the person wherever they might be found or at their residence. When there's a specific category, right? And I don't think it's that hard to figure it out. When we look at stuff like Columbine and Virginia Tech, we can just say school shootings, right? But there's a difference when somebody takes an assault rifle, which is absolutely the case in Columbine and Virginia Tech, and the Aurora Theater shootings, and Sandy Hook, and the Orlando nightclub shootings, and the concert shooting in Las Vegas. Every single one of those has a semi-automatic rifle involved. So I don't think it's too difficult to narrow down the criteria of what type of event we're looking at. And I think background checks is a very simple first step, that the resistance to even that measure of safety shows the hand of the NRA and the gun lobbyist. And I think it's that simple. How hard they're pushing back on even background checks shows, again, what we introduced this conversation with is a prioritization of profit over people.
So on the background checks elements of it, what's being proposed is there needs to be extensive background checks. So if you see how the process of getting a gun in South Africa is quite a laborious and expensive task. You have about 6 months, it's a 6 months to 8 month process. You need to go to a class for 2 weeks. You need to pay. You need to prove your shooting. You need to prove where you're going to put the gun safely. You need to get some people from your community to be able to vouch for you that you're allowed to be able to carry a gun. So there are a lot more steps that have been put into place so that even if you are thinking of doing something nefarious, at least you have the safety of time and background checks that can come into play. I think it's quite important to almost speak about the type of people that do these types of shootings. Right, it's the type of people. It's quite careless to say it's white kids that are doing it, because this particular kid wasn't white. He was a Mexican child. He was a Latina child. So it's beyond just race. Although 52.3% of mass shooters are white, that does not necessarily. 64.3% of mass shooters are white, but that does not mean that the issue is greater than just the race itself. What is evident in all of these mass shooters is chronic frustration and loserness, bro. Like, all of these people feel like deep losers. It's true frustration, failure to commit, failure of commitment, externalization of blame. All of these people are what you'd consider losers in society. And the one thing we need to be looking out for, I guess, is young men who are losers, that are externalizing their blame. That's the biggest indicator. It's not what your mental health state is going to be. That's not a biggest indicator. Your race, it could be, but it's specifically men under 30 that have chronic frustration, externalized blame, and are considered conventionally as losers. That is who's doing the killing.
Considered conventionally as losers is crazy. And I'm not saying that it's not a real thing. And I was just speaking to our willingness to look away from categories that we can make. But I think, the best version of ourselves is extending the fullest amount of empathy we can to those people. And I think that even that is a test, I know certainly, of my humanity, right? To try and put myself in the shoes of somebody who would go up and shoot. Like this case, I think is one where I'm specifically frustrated that I don't think anything will happen, because it's awful that this dude was, not that it's not awful if you go and attack your peers who may have bullied you. That's still horrific, and we need to curb that type of activity as well. But to go to, I don't think these kids weren't bullying him. These elementary school kids that had nothing to do with him probably had never met him. So there's an element of, and I appreciate what you said about the non-correlation with mental health, right? People who have mental health challenges are actually much less likely to harm anybody else than they are to harm themselves, right? So I don't think it's as simple as he was mentally ill. I think there's a specific set of circumstances that our society lays out that's exacerbated by the our patriarchal culture, which sets certain expectations on people, the way that we use social media, and the disconnect between all the things that you see and all the things that you have and all the things that you think you see that others have that they don't. This whole culture of comparison. I think there are a lot of things that compound and put pressures on people to that, and it warps their brain and it desensitizes them to violence. I think all of these things are elements, but it's really hard for me to figure out what the right approach is when there are lots of kids that go through that and never harm anybody, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So how do we figure out what is the point of intervention, right? How do we be preventative without punishing people for their thoughts? But also, how do we, I think a very simple step is to limit access to weapons that can make those thoughts, if carried out, so devastating, right? And so there are many layers to this conversation that often just get skipped over because it's one side of extremes trying to fight another side of extremes. But you brought up the laborious process that it takes to get a gun in South Africa, right? You have to get forms, you have to get registered, you have a waiting process, you have interviews, you have to get vouched for by your community members. In Texas, you don't need a permit to buy a handgun. You don't have to register, you don't have to get a license. Like, you just have to be 21.
What I hate about the US, is that the complexity of what it would take to completely solve the issue is the excuse that the gun lobbyists will use in order to not approach the issue at all. Granted, we might not ever get to a place where we're all completely safe, especially in the US where there's a bunch of people with guns. We might not ever get to that place. But to say because we'll never get to that place, it doesn't make any sense to enforce any sort of preventive measures makes no sense. If I'm a parent, I have to now be like, all right, let's invest in getting security guards at school. Like, I would have to invest in a private security guard for my child.
Okay, but who like, he better be G.I. Joe. Son. He better be John Wick because but think about it. We're still hiring people into these positions. And as we saw with the 12 that pulled up to the Uvalde shooting, giving somebody a badge and a gun doesn't always make them a hero. Right?
But let's talk about that. Let's get deep into that, right? Because there's been a lot of criticism that has been coming on how the police had handled that situation. What I don't think is fair is the fact that all of these police, a majority of these police, have never been in a situation like this. And there were reports that they did go into the building and they got shot at first and then retreated back and then waited for backup, which took a long amount of time, and parents were there trying to be able to get in. It's like when we had that Astroworld conversation. It's a situation that you cannot prepare yourself for unless you've been in it. And when you are in it, there's no perfect circumstance that you've trained for that allows you to react in a formulaic way. It's
that's real, hectic. But then don't speak out of both sides of your mouth. Don't tell me on one hand that we need to exalt these people and lift them up because they are the ones that put their lives on the line, but when it's time to put their lives on the line, they back chilling, right? So we need to be realistic about what do the police do, what are they good at, what are they not capable of, and how much funding should they really get? right? If you're not going to handle that situation, if you're going to let it unfold, if you're not going to save lives, then okay, what is your job, right? And what position do you have in society? What authority do you have, right? And I'm not saying I have the answers, but I'm saying when I look at a situation with parents that want to save their kids and police that don't want to go into the building, but then on the flip side, we're talking about guns and saying that you need a gun to protect yourself. Well, it seems like one group of people has a lot of contradictions to deal with.
But think about how difficult of a situation it is you're walking into, right? There's a shooting. How many shooters are there? How many shooters are there? Where are they shooting from? Is the shooter a child? Is it an old? You know, there's so many different.
There's so many factors. But if we're gonna set a group of people aside and say that they are trained to respond to this type of situation, and you as a citizen are obligated to put your trust in these people, then they better know how to handle that situation. I can look at them as a human and say it don't make you a shitty person to run from gunfire, but it make you a shitty cop.
Yo, but this right here is this is where saying defund the police doesn't make sense, because a lot of people are saying from on the side of good policing will say the people these guys are bad cops is because police don't get enough training. There's not enough training that happens for police for them to be able to respond to these situations correctly.
Oh, that's easy. We can get into the abolition conversation on that one. That's easy. Imagine if the cops' only responsibility was to respond to high crisis situations, which means no patrols, which means not pulling people over for your taillight being out. Imagine if their only task was responding to active situations where people have weapons that people like assault rifles and stuff like that, right? Imagine if they specialized in that. And we had another group of people that wasn't the police that, yes, took a bunch of the funding that the police are now receiving because police are sent to mental health challenge calls, right? Your family member is having a mental health challenge and crisis. Who do you call? You have to call the police. Even if you call the paramedics, they send in the police. So imagine if there was another group that was specifically funded to handle those types of situations without deadly force, and there was another group that was specifically funded to respond to active shooter situations, regardless of whether they were receiving gunfire or not. But neither of those two groups were also responsible for patrolling and policing and drug arrests and dealing with all of those types of criminalities. When I look at the police, I see 100 jobs that none of them are doing well. None of them are being done well because it's one person. So when we say defund the police, I actually believe you're asking for that. When you say they're not trained to handle these situations, make that the police, cool. Make that their only responsibility. And then let's have people that aren't carrying guns handle all the things we ask police to do that they don't need guns for.
So what the police, the chief police of the Uval area had said is that the reason why it took them an hour to be able to finally go inside the school was that they were waiting for those specially trained police. That the first responders that did come up onto the scene realized that they were that they didn't have the right type of ammunition, protection. They were getting shot at. So they weren't able to be able to go into that situation the way they wanted to. And they said that they did call on the people you call SWAT, Border Patrol. Everybody descended up onto that school. It took a bit of time to be able to do it because how long does it really take to be able to respond to a mass shooting of that sort? And in that, you saw a lot of parents who were frustrated, just like, yo, let me in. As a parent, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be stopped from going into a school where my kids are getting shot at. I couldn't imagine what that's like. But at the same time, it's responsible for the police to be like, we can't let you guys in at the moment. We can't even go in right now. We can't even go in. We're getting shot at. We don't know how to be able to deal with this situation. So I think it's one of those things where it kind of descends all the flaws of the policing expose themselves in a large way. But what we can do, there's many fingers to blame. What happened here is that somebody chose to do this and they made it happen. You know, you can choose to do this at a grocery store in Buffalo, shooting old Black people. You can do it at a church, and to circle back and be like, but the policing though, yes, the policing does have to be looked at, but at the end of the day, it was still a situation where somebody who might have been able to get prevented from getting access to those tools was able to get access to those tools and then was able to act in this manner. So criticize the police. Let's criticize the police. I'm with it, but you cannot blame the police.
No, and I don't think
them.
that's what we've done. I think the course of this conversation from where we started was, I would say it's appropriate. I think we got to police because they do have a role in this, but I don't think we started there, and I don't think I agree with you that it's not fair to blame them for this happening. As the people that are responding to these situations and who have a role in our society where we glorify them for that role, I think we have a high standard that they need to be held to. And if they can't live up to that standard, then we need to figure out who can respond to those situations and only allow those people to carry the weight that accompanies in society. Just a couple of
private security.
You're hiring private security? Okay, hire me some too, because I want to know them too. I want to know
security outside of the school. Private security, and like a lot of people can't afford that. Private security outside of school.
That's what I said. I can't afford it. Hire me some too. But I think, but we get
you are my security,
dude. You're mine, dude. This is either a great or horrible situation. But I think I think again, that's even hiring security is you're responding to the symptom. Right. The symptom is the violence. What is the root cause? I don't think we've done enough research to understand really what is the root cause of these specific situations where an individual picks up an assault rifle and decides to kill, whether it's a specific group or a random group of people or their peers at school, defenseless victims. What is at the root of that, and how do we address it? A couple other things I just wanted to mention in this conversation that I'm still thinking through and working through is the NRA is so against even background checks and access to certain types of weapons. But then on the flip side, we're prosecuting kids in urban cities for putting switches on guns to transform them into those same weapons. And I just think that there's a conflict, or there's a double standard in what we're and who can have access to guns, and who we champion it for and protect it as their right, and who we say, is a criminal just for possessing them. And this plays into when we see white kids pose with guns for their graduation pictures, but black kids do the same thing and it's taken a different way. Oh, now they're in a gang. Now this gun can't be for protecting or for sport. The white people use it for. So there's so many questions, so many areas and contradictions in this conversation. And I think it boils down to this moment where we have to make a decision that the line isn't where it needs to be. It's too easy to get a gun to commit this type of act. So if we can't agree on background checks, what can we that's the conversation I would actually be interested in having with somebody who's an advocate of assault rifles and access to them. What is the solution? Often I feel like I'm going to hear it's more guns. Give more people more guns. Give the teachers more guns. Give me something else, bro. I don't like that one. Go ahead.
We know the type of people that do it, right? Young men under 30. Young men under 30, we need to mandate that everyone gets a mental check. We need to mandate that everybody gets a mental check. That's super important. If you want a job, the same way you come with the CV, you need to be able to come with the mental check. Oh, look at that. We got one of my favorite people jumping into the conversation. Ms. Gila is saying more security needed in all public spaces, not human shield. She's very right in that. And if the same way we can mandate that everybody that had a sickness that we didn't understand has to prove some form of validation that they've given a vaccine, and we can get everybody vaccines and spend trillions of dollars to do that. Let's empower all of the psychologists and therapists and whatever the case is. And if you want to get a job, if you want to get to graduate high school, if you want to go to university, whatever it is, you need to get an evaluation and make that free. Free.
Yo, that's bro, that cool. I don't think I've ever even heard that, yo. Like mandatory therapy evaluation. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting.
And if you bring up a red flag, that means you cannot qualify to be able to get a gun under the circumstances. Because if they're not going to change how you get guns and you're going to be allowed to just walk in and do it, that's fine. But make sure that the people that are getting red flagged are, because we know the criterias of those people. We know the criterias of those people. You know what I mean? And even that, I think, would be big. It starts in high school, really, is where we're seeing this. It manifests itself in high school, and it rarely leaves the college area. So the people that do the mass shootings, like the Vegas shooting, who was done by an older gentleman, those are rare and far in between. Usually it's people under 30. So between high school and college, we should be doing rigorous mental health checks. And anybody that brings up a red flag, you disqualify for it. And if you do want to be able to utilize it, it has to be under very specific circumstances.
Yeah, I think we would have to be very careful about making sure that those examinations measure what they're supposed to measure, and making sure that it limits things like access to a gun, but maybe not things like actually graduating from high school or college. But like, damn, that's brilliant, bro. That's brilliant. We gotta. That's literally something that I want to research and read a book on now. You got a brain there, bro. You got a head on your shoulders.
Hey, and shout out to Mrs. Gila. You see her in the comments. That's where I get this information and this brain from. That's definitely where I get it from.
Yes.
I think we've unpacked the situation, man. We've unpacked it. It's sad, bro. It's sad, and it plays on mental health. It plays on your mental health. Already we're paranoid. 1/3 of people in the US are afraid of mass shootings happening. 1/3 people are afraid to go out because of that. Half of the people believe that it's going to happen in a place near them. It raises things. For me personally, it's one of those things that sparks up my anxiety when I think of the US, because it is a country that I love, man, but we gotta get this under control, and unfortunately it doesn't look like we will anytime soon.
Big facts, man. It's this there are certain conversations that we engage on this podcast that I think are too big to solve, too big to cover, and the whole hour, even, you know what I mean? Like, so I appreciate you helping to talk through this with me. I actually feel a little bit better than I did at the start of this conversation. Still a lot of work to do, a lot of anger and frustration to transform into productivity and into sustainable change. But thank you for having this convo. Thank y'all out there for rocking with us. Prayers up for everybody in Texas, and hold your head if you're going through it.
Yeah, man, and this is a good place for us to be able to remind people, man, especially, like, forget the labels of, chronic frustration and conventional loser. Forget those comments, man. What's important to realize is that we are the universe experiencing the world in the form of ourselves. So we are the universe. We are God experiencing universe in this way. You matter. Even if you don't think that you matter, you do matter. And this is what this show is for, man. This show is to remind people that they do matter. You are seen, and there's always a way forward. There's always a way forward. Whatever you're feeling is just a moment, and that's how the world works, man. So we here to tell you that you loved. Speaking of love, Miles, people love one thing that we do more than anything else that we do.
Yo, major facts. Damn, man, you had me tearing up, man. Yeah, we gonna do recommended review, man. Play the transition. Oh man, one of our favorite things. We get to do one of our favorite things about one of our favorite things. Atlanta, the show, FX, Donald Glover. This show speaks to me, bro. I'll start there.
Good place to start. I think we can conclude definitely, man. Season 3 of Atlanta, Donald Glover pulled up again with it. The man's brilliant, bro. The man is absolutely brilliant. And this is what I hear to be the last season of Atlanta on FX.
Oh man, they changing labels. They on PG Lang.
There might be PG Lang in it, but it's also possible that the show, this might be the last season of the show. But season 3, Atlanta, the final installment on FX. Highly popular show based in Europe. Whole lot of social commentary, whole lot of content. I was very interested to hear what you thought about the show because I know you weren't too fond of some elements of season 2. And in between season 2 and season 3 dropping, we had some pretty strong social commentary shows by Black directors that came out. Also non-Black directors, Dave specifically. And then you also had the Bust Down that came out. So there were the Carmichael show. So there were a lot of shows in between that popped up. Atlanta was started as the top show when it first came out to critical acclaim. And so it's interesting to see their transition now from being a story that focuses just on the Black narrative to being what it is today in season 3.
Yeah, you introduced that beautifully. And yeah, you're right. The first season of Atlanta, I think, is one of my favorite like pieces of work. Like as a representation of culture, like I would recommend that to not necessarily anybody to enjoy it, but anybody if you really want as close as you can get to being immersed in a culture without, and like that means jokes are going over your head, but you're there, right? It feels like you're present among just Black folks chilling in an authentic way. Like season 1 of Atlanta delivers that amazingly. Season 2 follows up on that idea, and I think there's this like creative incline. There's a trajectory toward stranger concepts and a changing tone that is embodied or hinted at in season 2 and fully manifests in season 3. And in a similar way almost to Kendrick, like this is a place where the early work was everything I ever wanted and more. And I'm in a place where I'm now appreciating some of the later work for its artistic value and for some of the topics that it's trying to tackle, but not necessarily feeling as spoken to. And I can appreciate that as a selfish thing because it feels like there are broader themes and they're talking to and about other groups. But I feel like both Kendrick and Donald Glover through Atlanta started with a focus that I felt very seen. And I think they're both with intentionality trying to make other people feel seen. And that's been interesting for me to watch evolve and to experience as a fan.
Yes. Artistically, he's flexing. They're flexing on here. And you have to give shout out to the whole writing team, to the director team. It's not just Donald Glover. You know, he makes it a point to be able to say that it is a huge collective. Even Zazie Beetz, you know, has some producer credits on one of the episodes. So it's a very intentional show, and I love how you describe the creative incline that they do, because they do take a huge creative front step in the concepts that they approach in the topics that they come into, starting in episode 1. And I wanted to ask you about how you felt about what you felt about that episode where they adopted the white people adopting the Black kids, the white lesbian couple. But even from that episode, the episode's called 3 Slaps. Check this out. And I checked this out when I was rewatching it, right? The episode's called 3 Slaps. It starts off with the scene in the boat. That's scene 1. And then from there, freaks out. He gets grabbed. The dude in the thing gets grabbed and then wakes up as a child in the classroom. And then wakes up at the end of the show as Donald Glover in the classroom. And when he's still a child, his grandfather goes up there and slaps him 3 times, right? So clearly they're extremely intentional in a Kendrick-esque way as well about putting in these different pointers into their creativity, meaning that almost at every point they are trying to be able to get through with the message or trying to convey certain concepts. What did you think of the lesbian ladies adopting the Black kids episode?
I thought it was looking back, having finished the season, it was a perfect introduction to what the season was going to be. Even the choice to use an episode that doesn't feature the main cast really until that last shot of Donald Glover, to let folks know that this season of Atlanta is going to be different and it's going to be broader and it's not going to necessarily lean on the main characters to deliver its message. I think that's understandable when I first watch it. I mean, part of me goes, okay, uh, my boy that plays Paperboy was just in a Marvel movie. Lakeith Stanfield was just in The Harder They Fall and is getting a whole bunch of looks. This cast has so many opportunities. It might be hard to bring them folks together. Maybe they're trying to fill some of that non-scheduled time with these other vignettes, right? Cool. Take it for what it is. I liked it, didn't love it, appreciated it for the perspective that it gave. But this is my issue with this season is that, and I'm again willing to say that it's a selfish one, but when Atlanta came out, Atlanta, both in the show, and I think there was an intentionality in the show embodying Atlanta is a black city. The whole thing about going to Atlanta is that you're in a space where even though we're still under this American system, the majority of the cops are black, a lot of the politicians are black, a lot of the successful business people are black. And so everything is black on black. The interactions weren't based on the dynamic between black people as oppressed by white people. The whole show was black people getting to interact within their own community, exploring issues that black folks have with each other, exploring certain coded language and ways in which black folks that are excluded or don't know about a certain aspect of their own culture struggle to determine and figure out their identity. It was so inclusive of the group that it was about and focusing on. And now it's branching out, and I think that first episode illustrates to show, and maybe I don't want to say it's for white people, but there's a lot more energy and effort devoted to helping to explain this dynamic between black people and white people. And while that's cool and it's done beautifully, I miss the show being a warm place where I got to see black people not thinking about white people.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they have so many different tools that are at their disposal. Like if you look at episode 9, Rich Wigger, Poor Wigger, like the shooting, the film, the scope that they shoot it in, the grain, the scenes, the lights. Rest in peace, Kevin Samuels, who's on that episode too. They do a masterful job in how they portray that story. And granted, one could say, in place, in lieu of that episode, you could have done what's Alfred like in Europe. Let's keep exploring deeper into the Alfred character, who I think him and Darius get robbed the most of their screen time on this show, which is a very interesting, which I wonder why that's the case. Definitely it looks into the Vanessa character, the Ern character, but Al and Darius tend to have a very limited involvement in the show, right? It will tell a story about the things around them, but it's like diving into them up until the final episode where they're in Amsterdam. The last few episodes where they're in Amsterdam, they dive into that. But yeah, it seems like the intention was to be able to say, okay, we're going to show all of our tools off. We're going to show you how good our writing is, as per episode 10. Right, it was the last episode where it's gonna be like, we're gonna make a movie out of this. It's gonna be crazy and forget plot logic and forget storyline holes. We're just gonna make a dope movie that looks into woman depression, and then we're gonna shoot some fly stuff in black and white. We want to be able to show that, and we're gonna have a bit of horror, and we're gonna have a bit of social commentary. So I think this season they wanted to display all of their artistic capabilities, which they did well, but where it loses, at least where it could turn some people off, is in the lack of continuity that the show might have, as we saw in season 1, where each episode folds into another one quite seamlessly. But also some people might enjoy this new Black Mirror-esque approach to it, like our producer has said was his favorite elements of the show, that you don't know really what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, it's everything it's trying to do. I think it does well. I think for me, it's like watching a chef that I love make desserts, make a whole bunch of salty stuff. That's fire. And it's like, oh, that's fire. But make that cake though. Remember that cake? And they like wings. And I'm like, remember that cake? And they like risotto. And I'm like, remember that cake? And they like sea bass. You know what I mean? But everything that they serving up is dope. I appreciated the reparations episode as like, I don't know. I'm interested to like, this is something that made me want to look on the internet to see how people was taking it. Cause I'm watching the reparations episode and I go, as somebody who's like trying to figure this out in real time, like what it actually looks like to get reparations for Black people through a variety of different systems and institutions, it's never going to look like individual cash transfers from white people that used to own slaves to Black people that are the descendants of those people. And it never is going to look like that. But in watching it, I'm thinking, are people getting that? Or are people taking it literally as like, this is what Black people and Black creatives want to happen? I saw it more as a depiction of this is what white people are afraid of, so let's play with it a little bit. But there's so much in this show, and I love that it doesn't baby the audience to like tell you this is what we meant. It just leaves it up in the air, and that's a bold artistic choice. There's so many different ways to interpret this show, to take it. I'm sure there were mad light-skinned brothers that were offended by the Kevin Samuels episode. You know what I'm saying? Like, I appreciate that about the art. It's fire. And I don't want to come off like I don't like the show. It just was more of a mixed bag, more of a mystery box than I expected. I did not know that it might be the final season of the show. So looking at it like that, I'm glad they got off so many of the different angles and perspectives that they were able to deliver on. So many moments still hit. So I appreciate what Childish is doing. I'm interested to see where he goes next. I will be sad if this is the last season of Atlanta because this combination of characters I wanted to see more of. So long live Atlanta. But fire show, recommended to anybody. It's definitely weird, but if you're looking for something that has a different pace and that holds your attention in a different way and show and knows how to pull at the heartstrings, but also show the beauty of people of color, just the one.
This your show. And if we have to give an official review on it, Miles, I would have to say I'd give this a 4 out of 5, man. I'd give this a 4 out of 5. I love the way it's shot. Location, choosing Europe. I think Black entertainers we've seen over time have had very peculiar situations that happen in Europe. As a man of color in Europe too, there are situations that are like, okay, this is a bit interesting, but I think like they portray that peculiarity quite well. It's shot well, it's written well. It's a good trilogy of a season. If this is all we get from Atlanta, I'd say that they've put out a stellar 3 seasons out, man. So 4 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 reels. This one is real for real. And if you like this, check out Bust Down, as my brother mentioned. Dave will be doing another episode where Zway explains why he likes Dave better than Atlanta. I still don't get it, but we'll get there. Any other shows? Insecure. Anything else that this reminds you of that people should check out?
Now you're just naming all the shows of Black people in. Steve Harvey show. If you're into
Steve Harvey show was fire. The Jamie Foxx show was fire. There's more out there than Martin and Fresh Prince, y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, dude, listen. We do this thing for a few reasons, but mainly because we know.
Oh yeah, we know. On this side in Chicago too, it's 12 p.m. on a Sunday, so some of y'all must have just checked in after church. Appreciate y'all tuning in to hear Mo talking after that. You could be anywhere in the world tuned into one of the too many podcasts that exist, but you here rocking with us. We appreciate that. We're trying to figure the world out, man. We're trying to make sense of these headlines. We're trying to process in real time. We're trying to create an environment of carefully curated content for the craniums of anybody whose cranium hurts. This world will make your head hurt, man. Just trying to wrap your head around it. So we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you tuning into this celebration of celebrating, the celebration of life, the celebration of how good it feels to be Black. Don't it feel good, Zway?
It's my favorite thing, bro.
Shout out to Hassan on the boards. Shout out to you out there, wherever you may be. We hope it feels good to be you. We hope you eat something delicious. We hope you hug somebody you love like that. Peace, water, we gone.
Yeah, I get that, but is